I suggest we talk about the moon, what it represents in astrology, and what it gives to a person. The moon is the celestial body closest to Earth. Although it appears bright in reality, the moon does not shine on its own. It only reflects the light of the sun. That is why its symbolism in astrology is connected to reflection and to distortion in reality. Through the moon, we perceive the world not as it truly is, but as we feel it from within. It is a mirror of our soul, which shows not reality itself, but our emotions, fears, and personal projections. When we interact with others, what we are really trying to do is understand them. Lunar perception is about how they feel and respond to this world. After all, everything that comes to us from the outside is reflected through the moon and triggers a certain reaction in us. Essentially, the moon is how we respond to life. It is the moon that, in childhood, helps us to understand the world through feelings, emotions, and bodily responses. Up to the age of 7, we live entirely in the lunar stage, so to speak, perceiving everything with our hearts. We accumulate our first emotional experiences. Then, thanks to Saturn, this experience turns into stable inner attitudes and psychological habits. If a person does not accept certain aspects of their nature, qualities that seem bad or shameful to them, these are repressed into the subconscious. But they don't just disappear into nowhere. From there, they continue to influence us and cause anxiety, restlessness, fears, and so on. All of this, the moon's shadow, these are unconscious emotions that are quietly trying to come out. The themes of the house where the moon is located are usually the most unconscious. We act there intuitively. And very often we simply repeat our parents' behavior. And again, it's unconscious. All fears, patterns, we copy everything, especially from our mothers. That's why the moon specifically shows how we behave with those close to us, in the family, how we express our feelings, and how we build a home and family. Not in terms of a physical house, but in terms of relationships, how all of this happens. The position of the moon in a sign and house tells us how we are perceived emotionally and how we feel about other people. These are our likes and dislikes, our emotional temperament, tenderness, sensitivity, caring nature, and our need for love and security. The moon shows how we express ourselves in our personal life, in relationships. And whether we feel loved depends on how harmonious our moon is. And it doesn't matter, you could be surrounded by the most wonderful people who treat you very well, but you still might not feel loved, understood, or protected. After all, your emotional perception and ability to build soulful connections largely shape your destiny. That is why always throughout all times, astrology has paid and continues to pay special attention to the moon, which reveals a person's inner world and true feelings, deep reactions. If your horoscope shows the moon in tense aspects, this indicates difficulties in your personal life, in family relationships, and in any close relationships. On the outside, such a person may seem quite nice and pleasant, but when you get closer, as the relationship becomes more intimate, emotional ups and downs appear, uncertainty in the relationship, sometimes tenderness, sometimes irritation, sometimes a certain detachment. This always creates difficulties with intimacy and prevents building stable, warm relationships. If, on top of all this, the moon is also weakly expressed in the horoscope, such a person may be emotionally closed off and practically inaccessible to those around them. It's as if they live nearby. They may even live with their family, but there is no real emotional connection at the same time. And in this case, a feeling of loneliness arises even within the family. Thus, when the moon is strong but tense, it gives a very restless character. A person easily loses their balance, worries about trifles, becomes suspicious and constantly irritable. It seems as if everyone notices their flaws. And because of this, a great distrust of people arises, along with suspicion and anxiety. Of course, much also depends on which planet is causing the tension. If it is, for example, Mars, then emotions of course become very sharp. And for such a person, it is quite difficult to cope with themselves. These are outbursts of anger, irritation, and some kind of inner storms. And this is where medical astrology comes to the rescue, which provides ways and methods of correction, what to do about it. The simplest thing in this case, of course, is to regularly drink choleretic herbs, for example, but do this very carefully and gradually. If it is Saturn, then such a person becomes withdrawn. They may often feel sadness, loneliness, and an inner heaviness, and even up to severe depressive states. Here, yoga is very helpful. If it's, for example, Uranus, then the emotions are very unstable and changeable. Such a person becomes abrupt, unpredictable, and often moody. It's hard to tolerate someone like that. In this case, working with your mother and keeping an emotion diary helps. Understanding what I feel. Well, whatever the aspects are, their purpose is not to create difficulties. Any aspects should be a source of inner growth. They make you sensitive, alive, and not indifferent. A strong moon under tension gives a very powerful creative potential and deep, profound emotions. The most important thing in this situation is to learn to manage your lunar energy, not to let it just chaotically control you. If the moon is strongly expressed in your horoscope, you feel an inner leader within yourself. It is important for you to be successful, to be heard, to influence others, and to lead. Such energy is often found in politicians, public leaders, and all kinds of inspirers. For example, it could be a woman who inspires very strongly, a classic muse who inspires her husband or partner to achieve great feats. This is a vivid, well-placed moon, a family-oriented one. And such a moon, yes, is not always about power. It can grant a powerful imagination and figurative thinking, qualities that creative people need. Poets are born with such a moon. Artists, actors, musicians, as well as psychologists and philosophers who are able to deeply feel the human soul and see the world in symbols, are also born with it. If the moon's aspects are harmonious, a person has inner peace and a strong sense of emotional comfort. Such a person easily communicates, is friendly, knows how to listen, and doesn't dwell on problems. Well, they let things go easily. Such a person is pleasant to be around, people like them, and enjoy communicating with them. People often come to talk to them, to open up. This might not be a super smart person who knows a lot, but when someone comes to talk to them, to open up as I call it, they find the solution to their own problem themselves and even thank you for it. They say, "Listen, you really helped me," or "You're so young, but you helped me." When really the person just knows how to listen well. Even if setbacks happen, they quickly let it all go and return to balance. It's easy and pleasant to be around such a person. They radiate gentleness, warmth, and a certain lightness. Such people usually have an excellent memory, especially for people and faces, because it is the moon that stores all emotions and connections. On the other hand, if the moon is tense, then, of course, memory for faces can suffer. Different planets that are with the moon add their own colors. Venus brings charm, lightness, and the ability to get along with people. Jupiter gives kindness and tact. Mercury brings adaptability, a talent for imitation and portrayal, which is especially important for actors and artists. Mars is the energy of decisiveness, often found in good surgeons and sculptors. Uranus and Neptune are inspiration, intuition, and the ability to improvise, which makes for good stand-up comedians. Rahu gives the ability to foresee and use all kinds of new technologies as soon as they appear. As for the position of the moon, it feels best in the lower part of the horoscope. These are the 3rd and 4th houses, her Karaka houses, natural houses, the zone of family, personal relationships, and inner life. Here it feels safe, becomes gentle, warm, and caring. In this position, a person finds comfort in their own home, among close people, and in emotional connections. But if the moon in these houses receives tense aspects from harsh planets, then of course problems may arise. Conflicts in the family, irritability, mood swings. This is doubly hard for such a person. Bye-bye. For whom home and family are important, often home is the most important thing of all. And there they can't relax because there are quarrels, conflicts, and a tense atmosphere. It's very difficult for such a person in everyday life because they can be moody and sensitive. These constant scenes are a classic of the genre. Of course, here you need to look at which aspects are present and work through them. In the upper part of the horoscope, especially the 9th and 10th houses, the moon is of course uncomfortable here. It feels less protected, and such a position makes a person anxious and extremely sensitive to the opinions of others. And if the moon is also very strong here, the person may display excessive persistence, a kind of constant control, thereby unsettling those around them and causing ongoing anxiety. And this can be compensated by a desire to be recognized and loved, not always in healthy ways. Such people often become very noticeable. They become popular, know how to attract sympathy and attention to themselves. But inside, of course, they are very sensitive to any form of rejection. If the moon is located in the 1st, 7th, 6th, or 12th houses, it helps a person build relationships and establish emotional connections and contacts. This position reveals the IU axis, enhancing interest in interaction, partnership, and the exchange of feelings. Usually, such a moon makes a person responsive, sensitive, and empathetic. And it is precisely through contact with others that a person comes to know themselves. If the moon is in the other half of the horoscope, it turns out that the person becomes especially sensitive and attentive to others, able to support, help, and comfort. As for houses like the 2nd, 8th, and 11th, it is, of course, very difficult for the moon to open up there. These houses restrain its fluid nature, and a person may feel internal tension and emotional stiffness. If, in addition, there are tense aspects to the moon, such a person develops a feeling as if they are being pressured from all sides. And they are not allowed to breathe, to open up, to freely express themselves and their emotions. And probably it is the most difficult for the moon in these positions. The moon feels most comfortable in the 3rd and 9th houses because these are houses of communication, houses of a kind of mentorship. It is very easy for it to manifest here. This is also a place of learning. Spiritual quests travel. And here, the moon easily perceives and shares experiences and, of course, grows. A special theme of the moon is relationships with the mother and heredity. The moon symbolizes not only our emotional nature, but also how we absorb family patterns, especially those on the maternal side. It shows our relationship with our mother and with motherhood. With the very feeling of care. For example, the moon in the 10th house often points to internal difficulties in the professional sphere, which, according to classical interpretations, are rooted in early childhood. Such a person may either repeat their mother's fate or struggle against her influence. Yes, but most often this results in a kind of seesaw when it comes to professional fulfillment. Sometimes on top, sometimes at the bottom, right? Sometimes victorious, sometimes defeated. Because this lunar cyclicity in the 10th house brings instability to one's professional life. The moon in the 4th house, especially with tense aspects, indicates difficulties in personal and family life, which again stem from childhood experiences and conflicts between the parents. Let me add a bit more to the picture with two aspects, Saturn and the Sun, as examples. Saturn is a classic example. Nowadays, many children are born to mothers who work, who are very emotionally distant, who have difficulties and a lot of responsibility on their shoulders. Sometimes these can also be single mothers. And in that case, the child perceives her as strict and cold, often forced to take on the role of the father. Of course, this gives the child inner maturity, but also a large number of emotional blocks that are best addressed. And the earlier you start, the better. The Sun, if it is well positioned and strong in the chart, on the contrary, gives care and support. This could be the father's care and support. These could be other male people who simply support. These could be government agencies, some subsidies, scholarships, and so on. The moon also reveals the scenario of family and attachment with which a person goes through his whole life, either goes through it as is and suffers, or begins to do something and then is already hidden. Enormous potential. It's very useful to look at the moon in a man's chart. If you are a woman, the moon shows how a man, based on his inner attitudes, chooses a wife. Yes, he may be attracted by Venus, but he still chooses his wife according to the moon. And if the moon and Venus are very different in their nature, then of course there may be a situation where a man has a wife and also a mistress or several mistresses. And for a woman, it's very important to study what her man is like and what he expects in a relationship in order to protect herself, so to speak, from rivals. The moon very clearly reflects our inner world, how we are built and how our significant other is built. That's why I highly recommend studying this aspect, understanding what to do with it, and using it in order to improve your own life, your state, your mood. If you want to find out where your moon is, sign up for a free consultation with me using the link in the description of this video.